through. All right. I see Bob's screen, but I don't see Bob. But I assume he can hear us. I'm going to call the FinCom to order at 6:30. And you may have noticed that I sent a message. I thought it would be helpful to have Chief Burgess join us, just because, I feel like the increase to the police department has sort of led to some questions, and I know we're sort of all trying to figure out how to account for and explain the, what at least on paper looks like, and well, it is a significant increase in operating expenses for the police department. And I think we're going to need to even, we're going to need to understand that. And I felt like there was still a little bit of confusion about it. So she's probably going to hop on any minute. In fact, I'm going to check my email. To see.
I think she also needs to practice explaining it, because she may have to on town floor.
Yeah, I was looking at that document that she shared with us when we were doing her initial budget review. And it's like I was even having a hard time sort of like recalling sort of how to explain what, kind of the model that she ends up with there, which is,
I met with her the other day,
Oh, good.
we
Yeah.
spent an hour together, and so I'll let her speak for herself, but I was gonna report to the committee tonight about that.
Okay, that's great.
I don't know how she contacted you to invite herself, or
I reached out to her to see if she was able to join us just for a few minutes, just to kind of talk through. It's part of my thinking was like, it's just been a long time since we looked at her budget. That was like, I think in November. I think it was one of the first departments we did, and I feel like it is the most complicated budget scenario.
well, it's a substantial increase.
Yeah. So I just thought it would be helpful to have her kind of walk through her proposal one more time for us as we're kind of nearing, our end of our deliberations. So, all right. So I thought she would hop on. Let's go to the minutes. Oh wait, she said, I'm running late, need to be on select board to the lake. Well, it's next. Okay. So why don't we move on? And when she hops on, we can cut to that. Let me just respond to her email real quick. So let's look at minutes from April 1st. Okay. Let's see. Has everyone had a chance to look through this?
Can I ask a question now, just for clarification, not to criticize the minutes at all, but
Yeah.
just in terms of, but my understanding was that now the regional agreement is the modified statutory method. So these minutes indicate that that's not clear. That was clear to me after our meeting. But George has written here that it has to be approved unanimously because it's an amendment to the statutory method. Is that all accurate?
Yeah. So I do think there's a little bit of confusion with item 6E. Desi indicated we only have the options to use the modified statutory method agreed to by towns or the statutory method. So no, actually that is correct. Yeah. So Bob, I think just to clarify, when anytime we're referring I think from this point forward, anytime we're referring to the modified statutory method, we're referring to the regional agreement method. And so regional school districts always have the options of what allocation method is laid out in their regional agreement or the state's statutory method. Those two exist. And if a regional school, if a region has approved an alternative method that DESI has then approved, that becomes an additional option as well. So
I guess what confuses me here is the letter G in that section. I guess my view is that, or my understanding is that if we had a regional agreement, then we wouldn't need to have a unanimous approval
okay.
of the allocation.
Yeah, so G, George, I think what this is referring to is that if the town were to, I'm sorry, if the region were to develop an alternative assessment method next year or any year in the future, that alternative assessment method would require the approval of all 4 towns. As long as we're utilizing the regional agreement method or the modified statutory, however, whatever we want to call it, that's only going to require 2/3 of the towns. So I
If
think,
in the future,
yeah,
the region were to approve an alternative method,
yes,
then
that method
it
would
will
require
need
the
to be
approval.
approved by all 4 towns.
Yes, exactly.
It will need to be right. So in the future, if in the future the region were to approve an alternative method,
Mhm.
other than the above, I'm going to say other than the above, just to be clear, then it will need to be approved by all 4 towns. Otherwise, the statutory method would be used. Okay, got it.
Yeah. The only other related point we made, although I don't know if it's needed for the minutes, was that if the region were to do that, were to have an alternative assessment method that was approved by DESI, that the regional school committee would always have the option to choose that alternative or the regional agreement method in, April or March or whenever it is that they're deliberating over their budget. In other words, like the towns get to say, here's a regional agreement method, here's an alternative assessment method, but the regional school committee is ultimately can choose between those two. So I don't think
I'll enter an H and say the ultimate approval, a decision of which method to use is
falls
made
with the
by
regional school committee. Yeah.
the final decision regarding which method to use for the assessments is made by, okay, got it, is made by the regional school committee. Okay, got it.
All right. Jim?
Yes, this is in section 7 VII.
Yep.
You probably meant this, but once the library bonding is complete, that wouldn't be, you don't mean building, do you, by any chance?
You said 7?
7C.
Yeah, you said I. Okay, all right, yep. Independent line will be increased by 1,000. Independent audit line will be increased.
It probably is the library bonding. Once the library bonding is complete, we can go back.
Are you sure about that? I thought it was more or less based on the construction itself when the construction was complete, but I don't know.
But they don't start the bond. I thought they didn't start it till the construction's complete. Because they don't know what they're gonna borrow until they know what the final,
Right, when they finish the punch list, then they have the
Right.
final cost, and then
right,
they
and
can
they use
take all the
different funds.
anticipated bonds.
Okay. All right. Well, in addition to that, the audits the required audits are every 2 years, not every 3 years.
Is
In
that
other
correct?
words, that,
To
yeah,
audits every 3.
I thought Susie said it was 3.
We need
Well-
3 consecutive ones for preparing for the bonding. And
yeah,
then-
but I'm just talking about what the normal situation would be if that wasn't the case. Because it says,
Oh, we
it
may be
says,
able to go to audits to every 2 years. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what you're saying. So
Yeah.
the very last,
I think we need to check that out. I don't know that that's true.
well, it is true. We went through, on the MLP, we went through this with with whoever does the audits because our portion, the MLP's, a portion of what it cost, of what it should cost the MLP went up considerably. And we confirmed that with Leverett and other towns who are in the same position. But it is every 2 years. So we set aside $2,000 per year to pay for $4,000 worth of auditing every other year.
I think that might be for the MLP, but I don't think that.
No, it's for the town. The
Okay.
town plus the MLP gets audited together every 2 years, except under special circumstances, which of course now includes the construction of the library, which is forcing it more, into a yearly regimen, so to speak.
Well, I went and talked to Gail Weiss. I guess this means I should go talk to her again.
I'm gonna say we may
Yeah.
be able to go back to our regular
Yeah, just leave off the
scheduled
years.
audit
Yeah.
schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would,
I'll keep it generic for now. We can
Yeah.
clarify in our next set of minutes.
okay, that
Right.
sounds good.
Able to go back to audits on our, I'll say regular basis. It should be,
Normal, yeah.
all right, that's fine, on normal or historical, I don't know what's basis. Okay, so go and we may be able to go back to audits on our normal basis. Okay,
Okay,
so it's a little rough, but that'll work.
sure.
On number H, did we want to put in that we will keep the PFAS line with a 0 budget? It may be needed in the future, and that funds from cash reserves will be used in FY26, because it sounds like there's 0 spending, but it's not 0
Yeah.
spending, it's
Right.
0 in the operating.
Funds will be transferred from cash reserves in FY26 to
Yeah.
the what, PFAS fund account, PFAS
Yeah.
funds? I'll just say PFAS funds.
yeah, PFAS mitigation of funds or, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like that. PCAS mitigation fund, I like that. Okay, got it.
Any other suggestions?
Nope.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the April 1st minutes as amended.
Second,
George,
Oh, I'm sorry, Arvanitis, aye.
Groves,
Aye. Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador abstain.
Stein, aye.
All right, so the minutes are approved. Next item on our agenda was to get an update from capital planning. So I can't, I don't know if it was George or Bob, somebody sent an email summing up.
I sent it to you.
Do you want to just kind of talk through? It sounds like we've got 4 items, one of which doesn't require.
Right, so
funding.
basically we took 3 actions.
Yeah.
And Bob will correct me when I say something wrong here, but we approved the 0-turn mower. And we agreed that the 11,400 is what we would need to plan on spending.
Mhm.
We approved the dam project, but we don't expect any expenditures in FY26 because it's the first phase, which is the design planning permitting, occurs in the summer, fall of 2025, and it's going to be funded by CPA funds and a state grant. Now, there is a chance the state grant will not be approved, awarded, in which case we do have some funds that we might be able to draw from already that were set aside for the dam. According to a member of the Lake Wyola Committee, we could use the 35,000 permitting account that we have, and we might come up a little short, and we'll have to figure that out. But the reality is, we don't expect that there'll be any funding requirements. And then the third item that we voted on was we voted to repair the grader and not replace it. So that's it. It's going to go to Amherst Welding, and Amherst Welding is going to repair it, and it'll be back in operation.
Do we have a dollar amount?
Well, the
Uh,
estimate that was given
16,000.
last year was 16,500. I think that we might have to have him check that, review that, see if it still covers the likely expense. But that was the estimate when he had it looked at in the fall.
Okay. So you said 16.6, right?
Yeah, 16,600 I think was the number.
So it may end up being something higher.
Yeah.
16.6.
We'll have to look into that.
Okay.
And that was it, right? That's all we talked about?
That's it.
Well,
We
you
did
said there was
discuss
an
a bunch of
emergency.
projects coming up that, I mentioned that that Lenny's gonna want to rebuild one of his trucks. He mentioned that to the committee here. I think it was to this committee, but he mentioned it to either this committee and or the capital planning committee, that he intends to do a rebuild on one of his vehicles. And that's coming up. We all know that we expect that the next year, the parking lot at the school will be addressed. So that'll be another substantial project that's on the horizon. So, and George has resuscitated the spreadsheet for the capital plan going out 5 years or more, and we're working on that. We're meeting tomorrow, Thursday, right, George? To just
Oh,
review.
yeah, that's just to review minutes. And I haven't done that, but we talked about it. I emailed the old version to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think it's a meeting we're going to have, at some time in the interim year, before we get rolling
Yeah.
next year.
And
So-
then, wasn't there also an emergency request for the fire alarm?
Oh, yeah, that's
Yes.
right. Oh,
That's right, and that's something I wanted to discuss here.
Okay.
That
What,
that-
can we pause on this actually? And because I see Chief Burgess just joined us. And so, Suzie, did you have a question about?
Yeah,
some-
I can wait. We'll come back.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll come to you when we wrap up. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate you. It sounds like you've had a busy night of meetings.
Yes.
Um,
I'm so grateful for your patience. Thank you. I could
Okay.
not leave that one until they finished the last piece that I was supposed to be there for.
No problem. So just a little bit of context. So we're kind of at the stage in our process where, we're looking, we've met with every department head, reviewed their proposed budget. We're now taking a sort of big picture view of the budget. We have a draft. We can now see the implications of the various proposals that have been put forth. We have a significant budget deficit that we're trying to figure out how to address and deal with. And it occurred to me that because we met with you so early in I think it was back in November, and your proposal for FY26 is probably sort of the most complicated to, I think, explain to residents, and because it does represent a significant increase in expenses, and for wages, and you had laid out in a lot of detail back in November the reason for that, and it had to do with kind of a staffing plan that you had put in place and were proposing, and you had a justification for that. And I just thought it'd be helpful for committee members to just have you walk us through that one more time. Because I think we're getting to that point where we've got to make, final decisions, and I just think it'd be helpful to do that. So if you're okay with that, I pulled up the, I think the document that you shared with us back in November, which was, and I'm wondering if that would be sort of helpful to
So,
have you kind of walk us through, or do you want to do this in a different way?
so let's try it a little different of a way,
Okay.
and then if we need to bring the document back up, we
Okay.
can.
Great.
First of all, I am
Mm.
so glad that I am not any one of you.
Yeah.
What a job that you're undertaking, and I have full respect and appreciation for what you're trying to juggle. Um, and I met with Bob, and he expressed more of information to me in regards to the budget that you're all working on and trying to make sense. So I want to try to simplify this in a way that maybe I would speak to just a resident in town that maybe doesn't have, that doesn't need the how I'm saving money component and that kind of thing. So if you'll just give me grace for a minute, and I'll
Absolutely.
try it this way. So there is a new statute, a new law in the Commonwealth that the police are now under the discretion and discernment of something called the Post Committee. It's the Peace Officer Standards and Training Committee. They certify and decertify officers, and they set the standard for what our education needs to be, for what our in-services need to be, and things of that nature. They decide whether or not we are certified or not. It used to be that there were two kinds of academies. One was what they called a part-time academy, where police officers would go intermittently throughout the week, and they would complete that academy. And once they graduated, they were certified, and they were able to be police officers as on a part-time basis. Depending on the town you worked in, you could work full-time. You just didn't receive those full-time retirement benefits and things of that nature. There was also the full-time academy, so that officers would go to a full-time academy on a regular basis. And when they graduated, they were fully certified and able to work full-time and receive those full-time benefits from the municipalities they worked in. The Post Commission has decided that they don't want to have part-time academies any longer. They want everyone to be in a full-time academy status. And so it's easier for them to just take all of the education, simplify it, mainstream it to that one line, and then everyone would have to fulfill the requirements of that academy.
Mhm.
When that happened, we lost a lot of part-timers in the field. I think that and the statistics, I believe, are that we bridged, because there was that bridge component where the people that were already part-timers were able to use a bridge academy to bridge to that mainstream full-time academy. I think the statistics are, and please don't hold me to this, but it's something like 2,000 people were bridged in the Commonwealth, and there were more than 4,000 previous to that that were through a part-time academy. So we lost, I believe, half or more than half of part-time police officers. We no longer have this wide pool of officers to choose from to come and work part-time in communities. People that wanted to do that were older, just said, I'm just going to retire. And we don't have the ability to say to anyone, go to this part-time academy, and when you're done, we will then take you on, because it's not there. So what we have to say to people is, if you're already certified, do you want to come and work part-time for our department?
Mhm.
They're very far and few between now, because most people said no. They've retired out. they didn't bridge, or they're already with another department and a full-time job doing something else. So guess what I'm trying to say is the pool isn't there to choose from.
Mhm.
So what are we left with? Well, if we want part-time officers, we might have to then send them to academies. We would end up paying the $3,200 for the tuition, which, by the way, is potentially going up. It's being fought in legislation right now. They want to take 2.8 million away from, this is not part that I would tell everybody else because it's way, but 2.8 million they're trying to take away from this program that helps municipalities like ours sponsor people with a lower tuition. They're taking that away, and then it would be close over $6,000 to then sponsor someone and put them through an academy, only to say, we're putting you through this full-time academy and we've got 1 day a week for you to work. People don't want to have to go through a full-time academy and then only work such a part-time basis. So what are we left with? We do have one part-timer who works 1 shift a week. His name's Nate Massey. We love him. We love him. He's wonderful. That's all he can give us. And so then we have open pieces to our scheduling component. We have open shifts. How do we fill those? How are we going to be filling when an officer takes a vacation, or when I take a vacation, or when people are sick? How are we filling those empty shifts? I've spoken to the Belchertown Barracks, the troopers there. It is incredibly difficult for them to take on the full responsibility of something like that for our town. They have a very large catchment area, and they're not able to always get to our town in a timely fashion. It could take 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It could be that they say, this one is not a priority for us. We're not going to answer it. It happens. So what do we have? Me potentially working 80 hours a week when my officers are out in training or out in vacation or out sick or something like that. It's not sustainable and it's not healthy. Or I can then ask the officers to work those other shifts upon their regular shifts and then have to pay them overtime, which would be exceptionally higher of what I needed to come to you for more money. Or we can just say, how about we grandfather in Nate Massey, because he gives us that 1 shift, but really he'd be happy just doing a couple shifts a month. And then we get another full-time officer, and then all of those shifts are covered. We don't have to worry about a part-time few part-time officers, which is what we would need to do. And then we have only 1 uniform budget. We have 1 salary. We don't have overtime expenses. We don't have the officers or myself working that many shifts over that are going to extend them out in a way that is unhealthy or not good for the profession that we are in, where we have to stay very vigilant constantly. And we then don't have to worry about trainings. 1 officer can go to a training, we get it covered on the other end, and they just take time out in that fashion. To me, that seems, it came out more lengthy than it was in my head, but I think that kind of explains where we are at in policing in general. I know that other towns are going through the same thing, and they are making very similar decisions. I know that the town of Leverett said, hey, we might end up having to send somebody to an academy here. They're having, difficulty in the same way we are. The one way that I have it better than a lot of the small towns is I've found a way to, and with all of your help, it's not just me, to keep retention in our department. The officers I have, they're staying, they're with me, we're in lockstep. And that's a lot in part of the agreement in their raises and things like that. And it's also because I brag for a moment. I really have figured out how to appeal to somebody wanting to work in a small town and be flexible for them and put their families first. And I'm just not, and we put it out there to try and find part-time officers. And everyone, the only people that we get inquiring about the notice that we have an opening is anyone that is not certified. Now, there are full-timers out there that are looking to work for departments like mine, like ours. There are officers out there that are looking to have a more friendly atmosphere. But they're all full-timers, and they're not going to come to us and work just a few shifts here and for someone else a few shifts there. Does that help?
That helps a lot. I think, so I had a couple of clarifying questions. So one is, but before I ask, Susie, why don't we go to you? And
Well, I was gonna ask for clarification. So I believe that the plan that you put forth for us was a sergeant that's full-time, 2 full-time officers, and a part-time officer and a chief. Is that everybody?
That's everybody. Mhm.
Okay.
And the current structure before implementing this new strategy is it 3 part-time?
So it goes like this. I'm full-time.
Yep.
Then we have a sergeant that's full-time. I have an officer that's full-time, and then we have Nate Massey, who gives us whatever he can, which is no more than a shift a week.
Okay.
And as it stands right now, he's in paramedic school because he's also a lieutenant on the Granby Fire Department. So he might be giving us even less as it stands right now.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
And
yeah,
I
George.
was just gonna say, so what's proposed then, back to what Susie said, a chief, a sergeant, how many full-timers?
So a chief full-time, a sergeant full-time, and 2 full-time officers. And then, of course, we want to keep Nate on our roster.
Okay.
But my guess is once we get another full-time officer, he might be happy to just do a couple shifts a month.
So it sounds like we're adding 1 full-time officer.
That's what I'm looking to do, George. Yes. So with all the numbers, as it stands alone, what we have right now, the officers received a 10% increase in their salaries. So if we just take the budget as it stands right now, you have to add that 10% on that's contractual. Then it's raised up substantial, that 10% there. Then I'm asking for the wages of another full-time officer per their contract for full-time position
Mhm.
in order to fulfill the structure and frankly, the request of the town. The town has said, we want 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. So I'm just trying to fill the shifts that we need filled and also be able to do my job. I'm a working chief and I'm out there a lot, but there are a lot of administrative duties that are now imposed upon me because of the new statute and the reform bill.
Bob and then April.
Yeah, hi, Kristen.
Hi, Bob.
How are you? So
Hanging in
just
there.
just to be clear, like, first of all, I want to just remind everybody, and you know this, Kristen, but the others may not. We did have a negotiation for the new union contract, and we tried to make, because we were told that we had these issues, some of the issues that you're mentioning now, that we would increase the attractiveness of the package for our officers, so we did provide a substantial raise in pay. We also provided the rotating account that would pay for details in a more timely manner. And we did add some other benefits to their pay structures so that we could retain them. So I think that was a good faith effort on the part of the town to address some of these issues. But the other thing is, I think that there's more hours in this budget than there were before. I think that's what you're saying. So there are more hours being paid, and there are higher rate hours being paid because we're now getting some officers that are going to get rank and so forth. So that's part of the reason why there's an increase in the ask, because we're paying for more hours now. I understand your point, and I understand the challenges that you've described.
Sorry,
What?
Bob, I have a question. What did you mean by more hours?
In other words, if the total number of hours that we're being paid for people in the department, let's just say was 180 hours per week last year, is it now 200 or 220? I did.
No, it's still 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week.
But
Yep.
is there more
And
overlap in between people that are on duty?
there occasionally would be overlap, but there always has been overlap before. And this is also, we're also trying to cover the hours that the officers are away at training. With the new statute, we have more training demand by the Commonwealth. So I guess sort of, but not substantially.
Well, my position is I really do sympathize with the challenges that you are facing. You just described one right there, that the state mandates that you have training. We have to pay people to get training. We have to pay people to go to the academy. We have to pay for a lot of things that are being mandated that the state is not helping us with.
Mhm.
But from my point of view on the finance committee, I'm looking at the budget and I'm looking at trying to reduce the pressure on the budget. And so what I asked you the other day, which is what I'll ask you and other people, is what can you do with less? Could you have to have everything that you want, or can you get something that you need that would require less money from us? And that's something I want to do to try to think of. We said that you think about it, maybe you'd come up with something, but in any case, that's my angle on this, is I'm really concerned about our budgetary process and whether we have to go into one of these mechanisms, whether it be excess levy capacity or override or something, in order to make it come together,
Yes. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that that is your job, that's on the shoulders of this committee. And I hope you appreciate that what's on my shoulders is making sure that the town has the ability to have their own police department, take care of them in the manner which they've requested that we do. I did look at, Bob, I promise you, you asked me to look at things, you asked me to try and figure some things out. And I did. And I feel that the only way that I could work with less is by not fulfilling the empty shifts that we would have. And I just want to give a quick, if I may, I don't want to talk forever, but I just want to say this. One Sunday, we typically aren't having officers on Sundays, and I had to make that decision because we have to fill certain shifts that are busier or potentially busier than others. There was a Sunday, and this has been happening more frequently. People have caught on to the fact that we're not here on Sundays. But more than that, there was an event that happened in Orange where there was an active shooter. And they were reaching out to communities for assistance. And we had no one available to send. Now, they didn't call me at home because I would have come in, but that wasn't their jurisdictional call. So they were working with less. Every person in the Orange Police Department had to go to this event. It ended up being that no one was injured, and there's a little bit more to the story, but and then they had the New Salem officer responding to all of the calls in Orange, and we sure would have loved to be able to help our neighbors over there, because if something like that, knocking on wood, would ever happen to us, I would hope that they would come running to us as well. So it's not just about other communities. It's about accidents that have happened on Sundays that we haven't been available for. It's just about filling those shifts and being there for the people that want us to be there for them. And so, Bob, I did look at everything, and I just can't seem to figure out if I'm supposed to fill these shifts and fulfill the request of the town. I don't know how else to do it. I've tried getting part-timers. They're not coming.
Thanks.
All right, Susie, then April, then George.
So one piece that came out of this discussion that I didn't really understand is that the new schedule that you're proposing has one full-time officer replacing two part-time officers, and the, the, that's the only change in staffing. And so, I feel like that's a simple piece. I guess I didn't really think about what was at the beginning, what we had right now. But by saying one full-time officer replaces two part-time officers, and then there's a sergeant and another full-time officer and a chief, that brings our department to full coverage.
You did it way better than me. You're
Well,
hired.
So I
we
think
worked-
that's where I'm getting confused, because I thought you said that the current staffing model is a sergeant, obviously chief, sergeant, full-time officer, and then one part-time Nate. Is that not right? Or-
Right, right. But what
Two.
we have to remember is that Nate can't always fulfill that single shift every time. We don't have anyone on Sundays, and we don't have anyone available for trainings, vacations, sick days, et cetera.
Got it. So is there a second part-time officer that's on the force right now, or no? So
No, we have listed an intermittent officer, Linda, but Linda doesn't do shifts. She is strictly just consult, and she does details at this point. She was grandfathered in before me in that respect.
Right, okay. So then I guess that's what's leading to my confusion about like Susie's clarification here, where it's, can we say that the proposed budget is adding an additional full-time officer to replace two part-time?
Two
Doesn't
to
sound-
three part-time officers. I mean, really, it's as I stated, Nate's going to be going to school, and he's going to be asking for some leave potentially to be able to do that. So it's could be it's real. I'm working it as three
Okay,
part-time
but those are
officers.
not three part-time officers that are currently
Right.
actively serving the town. It's in theory what would describe a fully staffed
Yeah.
force.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, got it. All right. I think that helps me. April.
Also, can I say one thing?
Mhm.
I'm trying to get away from the word force
Mhm.
and use the word department.
Okay,
It has
thank you.
connotations in it that I don't like that. So if you'll work with me on that, because a lot of people, it's a habit for people, and we're not by force.
Thank you.
Yes.
April.
Well, a couple of things, because I understand having another full-time officer is also will help in reducing the amount of overtime that you would have to pay. That was a piece of it. But it's also the whole concept of your community policing, having, a tight full-time employees. I think people are going to know individuals in the town, know where there are issues that are, potentially could blow up, or how to keep the peace, really. So I think there's a lot of good thinking in what you're doing.
Thank you. And you brought up something that I would be remiss if I didn't say, and that is also you just reminded me, you didn't bring it up, but something you said, uniform budget. So if I have three part-time officers, I have to then allot them the part-time officer, and I don't have the contract in front of me, but I think it's maybe 450 or something dollars each. Whereas one full-time officer, then they get a one-time, maybe it's 600. I can't remember. I don't have the contract in front of me, but it's something like $600 instead of that 450 times three. So that's something to be said as well. I also don't have to train because part-timers still have to have the exact same training as the full-timers. So I wouldn't have to train three part-time officers and send them to 120 hours each of in-service every year, just sending one. Yeah.
George?
What's post?
Post, Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. If you go to the mass.gov website, you can look it up. It is commission was put into place when the Commonwealth was putting the statute into police reform. They wanted the Commonwealth police officers to have an oversight commission. And they do. They are in charge of our certifications. We have to prove to them we've been through academies, we're trained. And then every 3 years, after we're certified once, every 3 years, we have to be recertified through a process, which is through attestations and things like that.
And when we talk about part-timers, like you're saying we're going to replace 3 part-timers with 1 full-timer, it's a little confusing because when we refer to the officers, we're talking about who we have in our pool. And you have 3 part-timers in your pool, but they don't all work every week, right? You just have part-time slots and you put somebody into that slot.
Right, George, I think we could say it like that. I think we could say the shifts, in the past, though, the reason that I say part-time officers is because in the past, that's what we've utilized is the part-time officers for these empty shifts. But yeah, I mean, it could be said that way.
And just in terms of trying to wrap my head and eliminate that confusion. But the bottom line is you have coverage from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's going to be the same. It's just structurally how you manage the pool.
Yes, we have no intention of changing those hours unless the town says we would like to change those hours. There has been discussion that maybe on the weekends we slide down, to a later time that we are here. But that wouldn't change the amount of hours that we would have. Maybe we started a little bit later in the day kind of thing. But no, suffice it to say, right now, there's no change because the town has not asked for that.
Okay, thank you.
Jim?
Yes, is Leverett still doing policing in Wendell, and has all talk of sharing police duties with other towns, Shutesbury with Wendell or Shutesbury with New Salem, is that totally been taken off the table?
Hi, Jim. How you doing? So yes, Leverett still services Wendell, and they do it by an a la carte style. So I'm not exactly sure. I have not looked at their contract, but my understanding is they mostly only respond. They don't. And I might be speaking out of turn. Please don't take this for, set in stone. But my understanding is that it is not necessarily proactive, that they really just respond there. Have all talks gone to the wayside for combining, regionalizing? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, so because the town did a survey when we had the police study group. And when was that? That was 2020, 2021. There was a police study group that was formed by the select board, and there was a survey that was done that went out to all of Shutesbury, and they majority said we want our own police department. We want to keep what we have. So as of right now, from my understanding, is that we are trying to work with what we have. I will say this. My department in our most regional area of small town police departments of our size, most regional around us, I am the one who has the most retention and the most coverage regularly. So I feel there's a lot more to that, but we're doing something right here. Did that answer your question, Jim?
Yes, I was sort of aware of the survey that was done some time ago, but police regionalization has come up frequently as a possibility of sharing expense and police officers in our small little region here, because we have 4 towns that could work quite well together, but sad to say that has never worked out for the economic benefit for all 4 towns, but maybe someday it will.
Well, Jim, I'll tell you, I did reach out to New Salem. They have a part-time chief and they have a full-time officer and a part-time officer. And the part-time chief is looking to retire soon. He's already retired once. He's looking to retire again. And I reached out and said, you know, Shutesbury might be interested in helping. They did a survey and they want to keep their own police department and their own autonomy. So I think that people are trying, towns like ours, like Shutesbury, are trying to hold on. And I think we're doing a good job. I think we're doing a darn good job here. So
All right, Bob?
Yeah, Kristen, I agree, you're doing a great job, and
thank you.
people, I like your officers, I like the way their show runs, but I want to just go to big picture here, which is what Jim brought up about regionalization. It's not about not liking your police department and wanting to dilute it. It's about managing the financial impacts of these things. Like every town is dealing with these things, and every town has got to address the issue that, say, our school budgets are going up faster than inflation, our police budgets are going up faster than inflation. A lot of our budgeting process is under pressure. And now with post-COVID, I guess what is the world we live in, there's more regulation. There's a lot more wage pressure. We just had the personnel committee come and make recommendations for substantial increases in wages for retention. We did try to address that in the case of the police department here. See, I just see that we have to give up some of this idea of autonomy and be more cooperative in order to handle the financial impacts. That's what's true for the school. I've been discussing with the finance director of Pelham, and he's been kicking around ideas that he brought up about maybe combining forces on our schools and to make it more rational and less impact on our taxpayers. I think that's also true for fire. Administratively, there's no reason why Pelham and Shutesbury and New Salem couldn't share some administrative costs. You talked about the administrative expense that you have to withstand. So we have to work on some solutions to the financial impacts here, because this can't go on. It's going to drive people out of our town, ultimately.
Can I ask a question? What is the percentage of the town's budget what is the police department's percentage out of the entire town budget? What percentage do we hold?
Yeah, I can tell you that.
The school is like number one. It's 2/3 of close to 2/3 of our budget.
Yeah,
so,
no,
between the two schools.
Yeah, so the percentage of the police budget, I mean, it's small, Kristen. There's no question about it. It's so the budget is 7,790.
About 4%.
You're 4%.
Oh, 4%. Are we the smallest, or is there someone smaller than us?
Oh yeah, there's many that are smaller than you.
I mean, department-wise, sorry, George, I should have.
No, I know. Yeah, no.
Fire.
Library, you know, the assessor's office is probably smaller than you. Hey, your department has a number of staff, and staff is where the real cost is in the
Yeah.
department's operations.
Right. Yeah, you know, and I serve at the pleasure of the people, and the people decided that this is what they wanted. And you know, we've visited this before me. The town visited this, I think, a couple of times. I believe, Susie, am I correct in that? That they talked about regionalizing at least 2 times before I came here. And it was always that they weren't interested. So I just want to say that when we got the survey and the town had this majority conclusion that they wanted to keep us, I think that's our job now to try and make it work and figure it out. And I'm hopeful that you all and the residents can see that what I'm trying to do is just give them exactly what they've asked for. And unfortunately, we are in a season of difficult finances. So I did say this to April once. I believe we are going to get through this. I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's when you get to that light, who do you want to see on the other side? Because we are going to get there. We just need to decide what we want when we get there and who we want to see on the other side. So, of course, I'm not in your shoes, but that's my Pollyanna perspective.
Susie.
And if we were to make changes such as regionalizing or sharing administrators, The process to change that does not begin with the police department. And that is why we did the police study committee. And we met and we considered ideas and we surveyed the town. And if it was to happen again, if we felt like, oh, something has changed and we need to do this, it doesn't start with the department. It really starts with the town. And you have to figure out the mechanism that you feel reaches the town. So tonight's discussion really isn't about reaching the town. You could hope that something could come up, but you have to have a process to make it happen.
Mhm. Okay, any other questions for Chief Burgess? Okay,
I do have something that I do need to address.
please.
Okay. Thank goodness Gabe is here. So this is something unanticipated. It's small though. Let's start with the great stuff. We had a body camera system that was antiquated, and when I took the office of the police chief was already 5 years old at that time. I then worked a few more years after that, and the cameras became unusable. They would shut off when they felt like it. They would turn on when they felt like it. They wouldn't charge. They were of the nature that you could not be reliable with these, and with that, I had to take them off the shelf. Last year, I asked you all for a $12,000 line for new body cameras. And I also tried to get some grants. Now, I did get a grant, but we were waitlisted. And that didn't seem that it was going to be coming through, and it didn't. When that happened, I need to make some adjustments because we need body cameras. The officers were begging me for the body cameras. The residents were saying, why don't you have these anymore? And it's just good practice these days in the day we are in to have body camera. So I called up 2 different companies. Axon was the first one. I said, I have $12,000, not $12,000 and a penny. What can you give me? They said, to be honest, not much. We'll write you up a quote. I said, okay. So I called WatchGuard, which is the company that we used previous and that we had the cameras through previous. They were much more willing to work with me. After I explained my plight and that we are from a very small town and our budget is very small, and I just met with Bob Groves, and he told me even more information that scared me about the finances. They were able to give me multiple discounts. We went from close to $40,000 down to that $12,000 number. Now I'm going to tell you what I received in that $12,000: 5 body cameras, 5 licenses, docs to download the information, a full redaction system. A redaction system is huge because then with the assistance of potentially AI, I can go in, take out blur faces of minors. I'm able to take out audio of things that certain people can't hear that are under statute and exemption rules. And they gave that to me. They also gave us the storage cloud, all for $12,000. In 2 years, I get all new batteries for the cameras. And in 5 years, I will get all brand new cameras again, and any updates that are necessary for the storage unit or storage cloud. So that's the best news. There's a $3,000 fee associated yearly with that for like a subscription, just to give it plain and simple. And I was not expecting that at all. And I do need to add that to a line. So we can either add it. I thought the best way to do it would be to add it to operating. So it just comes out of operating every year. So I did get written down somewhere. I'm not sure if you had received that information that had happened, but to me, this is the best news. The cost of everything again was close to $40,000, and I got them down to $12,000 with a $3,000 subscription fee, which is also discounted because we're a small town. So there's that.
All right, so just a couple of clarifying questions here. So the the costs for the hardware itself, which was $12,000, that's equivalent to the amount that was authorized
Correct.
1 or 2 town meetings ago, right?
Last year, I think, yep.
Last
Mhm.
year, okay. So there's no added needed
None.
funds for the capital. Okay, so what's new is the subscription, the annual subscription fee.
Right.
Okay, so I guess one question I have for you is the subscription a requirement to actually utilize the body cameras? Like, is it, or are you paying for some added
No, it's
Service.
a requirement, AJ. Yep.
all right, so they're useless without the subscription.
That's right. And it also then benefits us in the way that we're locked in and we get new cameras after 5 years. These cameras don't last more than 5 years, really. I mean, they get a lot of use out of them. So we get brand new cameras and we just keep rolling as long as we want to keep that subscription fee that I was told, and I believe I have it in writing, stays at that number.
So whatever license you have to sign or contract you have to sign indicates, is it subject to revision each year, or it's
Nope, we're
in order-
locked in.
We're locked in? For
We
what
are.
period of time are we locked in? Do you happen to know, or?
For the 5 years.
Okay,
And then we can make that decision after the 5 years. They'll reach out to us probably a year and a half, 2 years before, and we can start discussing. They give us plenty of time to decide if we want to continue with them
Okay.
at that 5-year mark.
Okay, any other questions from the FinCom about this? Okay. All right, so, yeah, we'll discuss like what we think is the best line to allocate. It sounds like police.
There's only one line. There's a,
Operating expense is really the only
right,
option.
police
Okay.
department
I'm
operating
not gonna
expense
add
line.
new one. Okay, got it. All right, so we'll update our budget to reflect that.
I just want to thank you all for bringing me back in for another opportunity to try and clarify. I hope I did, and I did not get you more confused. I hope you have some good clarification, and I
Yeah, that's super
appreciate you all.
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Am I allowed to leave now?
Yes, you're allowed to leave. You're also welcome to stay, but you're allowed to leave.
I think I'll just go. Thank you all.
Thank
All
you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hi, Gabe. Hi, is that Haley next to you? How you doing? Thanks for joining us, guys. And Haley, thanks for joining your first Shutesbury FinCom meeting.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's an interesting time to plug in because we're sort of nearing the end of our kind of annual budget process, and we've done a couple things tonight. One was just get an update on the comparatively small number of capital requests that were submitted this year compared to other fiscal years. And actually, we were doing that discussion, and then the chief joined in. I'd asked her to join in our meeting because I thought it'd be helpful to have her walk us through her proposed budget again, because it does represent some significant changes. So I think the plan for the rest of tonight is we're gonna just finish up this capital planning discussion, and then I think we'll pull up the budget and take a look at that. And Gabe, we might have a couple questions for you.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm going to join Kristen in asking for more money.
Okay. All right.
So,
All right. So
But-
you've primed us. We'll get there in a few minutes.
so it is capital articles. So I don't know, AJ, if
Okay.
you want to include it in your capital article discussion.
Yeah. Let me do this. Susie had a question that I asked her to hold when the chief came on. So let me get to her question. And then Gabe, is the new request the fire alarm issue? or is
No,
it not the law?
unfortunately, no, the
Alright,
select board, they just added to.
Okay, got it. All right, so we'll get there. Suzie,
In choosing to repair the grader, I'd like to know if it's been researched, if the program with the state to lease, to buy using Chapter 90 money, if that program is still going to be available in the near future.
So I went online and I looked up Chapter 70 documents from the state, DOR, I think I found it. And
Chapter
there's a
90.
pretty comprehensive guide, and it documents the lease program, and it documents all the equipment that are eligible, which is a very broad range. And I honestly, the next time the highway asks for anything, we need to look at that as an option and see if that really works. You know, there's always going to be the tension between repairing the roads, buying equipment. How much can we really take from Chapter 90 and still keep the roads? And that's really a judgment call for David. David's going to have to tell us. But from what I could see on the website, that has been around and is going to remain that way. It's fully documented, and any one of us, if you do a search, you would be able to find the document. When Bob and I were at the Capital, what was it called? The Capital Planning Seminar by the Mass Municipal Association, I asked that question about that, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's a real program. It's been around, and towns do use it." So it's not a flyby. It's not a one-off, and it's not related to the extra funding to Chapter 90. It is a part of the Chapter 90.
so George, can you clarify one thing for me? Because I was trying to wrap my head around this. So, similar to Chapter 70, the state has some kind of formula that calculates a Chapter 90.
Based on miles.
Okay. And that, so is that an amount that's awarded to the town? Or I thought the way you or somebody else was describing it is that it was sounded almost like it's an amount of funds that's available for us to kind of draw down, but there may be years in which we are, for some set of reasons, we're not drawing
Yeah,
down.
that's Gabe. Gabe can give us the details.
Okay, Gabe, could you give us a little just
I sure
background on that?
can. And AJ, your recap was right on. So they award us a certain amount every year, and I can tell you that this year we've been awarded $234,178.27. So if we choose not to spend that all in this year, say you don't have a road project or you don't have one, that money stays with you and it moves into next year. And then next year's money can be added to it. So we would have to find out from Gail what is left right now in the Chapter 90 that hasn't been tapped, because that's a good thing to know, and I haven't looked it up. For the payment, if you decide to do buying the piece of equipment through their payment system, their lease system, and the payment is $80,000 a year, you would have $150,000 for road work plus what you had left over from last year. And I believe Gail has it, George and I talked about it slightly, very lightly before. Each year she has identified in the special funds report, I think it is, how much is in there right now. And as far as I know from Dave, he had no resurfacing plans, but you can call him back in and talk to him about it if you want to investigate this more. But I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. So I'm assuming that like departmental wages is not an expense that can
Oh, no,
be
no, no.
utilized.
Not
right?
anymore. It used to be. You
Okay.
used to be able to charge wages against Chapter 90.
What about things like materials, like
Yes, you used to be able to charge machinery usage.
Mhm.
Like if you used a town-owned piece of equipment, you could charge so much per equipment per hour that you ran it. But that has kind of gone away.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. George.
What was I going to say? I'm typing the minutes here and I forgot what I was going to
Okay.
say. It's going to come back to me real quick.
Yeah. Can I say while you're thinking about it, I was
Oh,
going to ask,
actually, I've got it.
Yeah, go ahead,
historically,
Bob.
we've been spending all our Chapter 90 money we don't have balances from out years. Maybe we have a small one from last year. I'm not sure, but we have been spending it on road work. We haven't had a paving project this year at all. I don't know where the money's been going, but we haven't had a paving project in town. Maybe there's some other related costs like the catch basins. I don't know if that's applicable. That's something, but that's what we have to do more research on to understand what the parameters of that law are, because it'd be good to know. However, we have been spending it just on road work, on paving, basically, historically, I think.
Yeah, so, right, I should have saved that document. I should have stored it on my computer. Unfortunately, I didn't. So I'm looking at the expense report, and what Bob said is confirmed. The 23 number was $97,000. We spent it all. The 24 number was 132,000. We spent it all. The 25 allocation was another 132 again. We've spent 50 of it. So we currently have 82,000 available for the next 4 months, call it. Actually,
I guess it's
But
because we've been keeping,
the fair share grant is on there too, George. Do you see it?
yes,
And I think
85,000,
that's the
84.
last bump we just
Yep.
got.
Yeah, 84,000. So at this
Yeah.
moment, we have 166,000, 167,000.
All right.
You're right. The fair share it's farther down.
And that gets carried over to next fiscal year if we don't, whatever amount we don't spend?
Yes.
But does that mean that next year, whatever balance we've carried over gets factored into what they award us? Or the formula is strictly just mileage? Yeah,
And
okay. got it, good.
population.
So we don't lose.
No,
we don't
Rolls
lose-
over.
No.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. Last question about this that I had is are equipment repairs like an eligible
No.
expense? No, okay. So
Maintenance and repairs do not count. It's purchases.
okay, so that wouldn't help us with the greater repair. Okay, got it.
I'm gonna get that document distributed.
All right.
Would a new plow truck be deductible?
Not equipment. Yeah, it was an extensive
Yeah,
list. Not a
okay.
plow itself, but the truck that the
The
plow
truck
goes
itself, the
on.
truck itself.
Yes.
Oh.
So the next time we need a new pickup truck, I mean, really,
Yeah,
anything,
yeah.
we do need to look at this. And, Dave should think about that, and maybe if he can, let some of these funds build up.
seems to be happening this year.
Well, now that the weather's better, we'll see what, he might be drawing those down quickly.
And Bob, I think you gave the number of 16,600 was the
Yeah,
the-
the estimate he shared with me that he got last fall, yeah.
Yes.
okay,
Now,
got it.
I expect he's gonna have
For the
to
repair.
ask him to revisit it, maybe talk to Darren and see if there's any change in that, so that we know the number that's gonna work for him.
Got it. But at least for tonight, we can
But it's
Kind of
something in that
plug
ballpark.
that number. Okay,
Yeah, that's what I got in the minutes.
all right. Susie?
Did anybody check this decision with Dave to repair and not lease, not lease? a
Dave
new-
wanted us to buy him a new one. He
Yeah.
asked us to buy him a new one, and we asked him about the chapter 90,
Mhm.
and he didn't really have a definitive answer, but he was comfortable with it. I floated the idea that, if he took it from chapter 90 and he was going to come up a little short, we could possibly put that aside somewhere else to help fill that gap, because that would be cheaper than borrowing for a $300,000 and $400,000 piece of equipment. But we had a good debate in the committee. There was 5 people there, and 2 people voted for it and 3 people did not.
Let me just say, Susie, to answer your question, that when Dave first presented this request to capital planning, the option of repair was one of the options he presented to us. And he gave us that number, the estimate. So that was one of the options. The other option was for a Caterpillar, a John Deere, and then purchase and lease. He never came up with a price for a used one, which was one of the things that I asked him to do, but he didn't find one. There was none out there or whatever. He didn't come up with one as an option, but the other options were presented to us by Dave. So, and I did discuss this with Dave extensively. So,
So,
Wanted to do
so let me read what he did. what he said. We are looking to replace our 40-year-old grader that is operating on borrowed time, and it is in disrepair because we feel that to continue to sink more money into this machine would be money better spent on one that can be used for many more years. We have been running the grader as a used one since 1998, so we bought it used in 1998. Estimated repairs are 15.6.
Well, so just to review it, we did vote on this, Susie, at capital planning. We made a recommendation to repair the machine.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that he is new at his department. We get to go with this answer for now. It wouldn't surprise me if we're back next year looking to put a new grader on the road since half of our roads are dirt. But he'll figure that out.
Well, it was also noted, by the way, that there's logging operations going on in our town and those roads are going to need extra service. But the person who pointed that out still voted no and still voted to have it repaired. So, whatever, that's how the system works.
How it played out. Okay. So, we may be in a position, an even better position next year because we'll have this, we'll have built up this chapter 90 balance.
Possibly.
Which might mean that there's a better chance that it'll cover the purchase of a new piece of equipment, if that's the route they go and not this leasing option or whatever. But okay, got it. All right.
So fair share money has really jumped, chapter 90 money, in the last year. And there's some big shifts as to what we were getting, 3 or 4 years ago as to what we're getting now.
Yeah.
And it's coming from fair share.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that
Right.
should continue reliably without the government, the federal government taking it away or something like that.
All right. So does somebody want to fill us in on the fire? I meant the new capital item, which was the alarm system.
I could talk about it.
Like yeah, Bob, and you guys voted on it, right?
We got an email, I think, from Gabe about this. There was an inspection, the town hall's fire system, and I guess the elevator was calling, was acting bizarre, and the system wasn't functioning as it was designed. So this contractor was brought in. He said in order to make it safe and to make it up to code, he recommended that a certain amount of work be done in part of town hall, the part of the town hall, I think, that includes the elevator building. And this estimate was for, what is it, like
It's
8,000 bucks?
We've had one bid so far and it was 8,648.09.
Right. I think that everybody agreed on the capital planning committee that this was a necessary job to do. But my question is how it should be funded, whether this should be funded as a capital project or not, or whether this should be funded through some other mechanism here through this committee. So that seems to me the principal thing for us to decide how, not to whether or not to do it, maybe to get some more bids. The building committee is going to do that, but to find out, or to determine how it should be paid for.
Is it a strict repair or is it like an upgrade or what?
It's an upgrade. I call it an upgrade.
It's a replacement the way it's
It's
worded.
replacing the panel,
Okay,
the electrical panel in the elevator. It's replacing the panel.
got it.
And we
I-
just paid $404 for a trip out here to look at the silly thing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been approved.
Yeah, and the committee's approved it. I guess my inclination, Bob, is I would prefer to treat it as a capital expense and not have it add to our operating budget this year. And it sounds like can be justified because it is a new piece of equipment, right? It's a new panel.
Well-
That would be my instinct. George?
It qualifies as generally speaking, capital planning is $10,000 or higher, but it's a one-time purchase. It's not something you want to put in your operating budget because it's a one-time purchase.
No, I wouldn't recommend that, but I just wonder whether we should do a transfer from free cash.
Or a warrant article. A
Yeah,
warrant
warrant
article on town floor for a FinCom transfer.
Oh, it's a building
I'm
project.
sorry,
It's a building project, right?
a free cash transfer.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Because our FinCom reserve is getting low.
Yeah,
And the other thing I
Yes.
wanted to say, the reason I had my hand up was the person from the buildings committee, McGuinn, I'm sorry, I forget his first name.
Frank,
Frank.
Frank said he was definitely going to get 2 more bids. He's got 1 bid for the 8,600 something, and he is definitely going to get 2 more bids. So the most it's going to cost is this $8,600.
Got it. Okay,
8648.
got it. And Susie?
so can we pay for that out of the building repairs funds?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Please.
So the select board asked the same question today of the building committee, of Frank, who is the chair of the building committee. And he said they have earmarked most of their money for some electrical upgrades and they don't have it.
Mhm.
Do you know what number they're working off of? Because remember how last year there was 30,000 written
Yeah,
in
they're-
2 different places? So how much are they earmarking?
I'm not sure how much they're earmarking for it. They have a whole bunch of projects that they're doing, Susie. We could probably ask them to send, they have this big, huge chart they're working
Yep.
on.
We looked at that.
So that was the answer we got today.
Okay,
All right.
I talked to Frank today at the socials, and I made him aware that we had eliminated that line that he appeared before us to defend, so that he understood what we did. And he was talking to his colleagues, I guess Stephen is his name, and he said he was going to come back to see us and just look at the budget. Told him if it's okay with you all, I would share a budget draft with him, and so he could see what I was talking about. Is that all right to do?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I expect that we'll see him back here. And then he can clarify what he has in the fund. But I think, I don't know when we address this issue of funding this repair, I don't know if it's in a timely way for it to wait till town meeting. Gabe, is that gonna work?
I actually have a suggestion for you, and that's that I write the article and then you remove it. So
Okay.
the article is there, and then when you and the select board go through to vote on whether you're supporting an article or not, you can remove it.
Sounds
But
good.
then it's there for a reminder there, and I don't know when you're gonna review this. But
Yeah.
say you do your review in May, about the middle of May. If you've changed your mind about it, you remove it.
Sounds good.
Susie?
so I'm confused if this panel needs to be replaced before FY 26 begins, before that town meeting.
It can make it to your end, they said.
Yeah,
Okay,
All right.
it just means it keeps breaking down.
Hopefully not more $440 bills.
All right.
When's the last time somebody used that elevator, I wonder?
Yeah.
Jeanette
Yesterday.
used it, Jeanette used it today.
Is
Yeah,
it?
people
For
use
what?
it to get upstairs.
Oh, novel.
All right, this is what I think our capital funding looks like right now. So I've added, correct me if I'm wrong, capital planning people. I've
That's
put
right.
in 11,400, 8,648, and 16,600 for greater highway department greater repairs. And I'm assuming all of those get funded from free cash reserves.
I think what we should,
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say, we should put them down here. And we can put them in the free cash column now, but once we get everything on this sheet,
Yeah.
because I think we might want to add a budget item or two at the bottom, then we can go to the lower part and look at what our balances look like and decide if maybe we want to raise
Yeah.
any of the other accounts
Right.
Okay,
to not take FinCom, I'm sorry, free cash too low.
yeah, because we're at 10% right now with what's in here. Okay. Gabe, you want to tell us about your news?
Sure, hold on a sec. I had to unmute myself a different way. gonna lower my hand. So today, Rita asked me to bring forward to you folks, they would like to put an article on the warrant, the select board would, for a $10,000 for repairing downstairs town hall, for doing some sound proofing, and some work in that area, because it is our only meeting place in town. And it echoes really badly and people can't hear people talking on the meetings. And so we did look in, when I first started here, they had me look into the cost of putting the soundboard up in that room. And we're gonna have to clean up that room, maybe buy some cabinetry to put all that yoga mat stuff in and everything. So they would like an article for $10,000 for the downstairs repair out of free cash. That's
So
one.
this is in the big meeting room. in
Yeah,
town.
this is the big meeting room downstairs. So, and then the second thing, is the Lake Wyola. I don't know the fancy name for the Lake Wyola people that it's a board. Jennifer Wallace is on it. And right now we're applying for all kinds of grants to fix the roads around the lake, culverts, different things. So we have a $79,000 grant application into something called rural development. It's a rural program. And the success of getting the grant is based on a match. So we're looking for a match. And Jennifer told us tonight that the Lake Wyola Association is going to meet this week and see if they will vote to pay half of the match. So the match is about $8,000. So if the Lake Wyola Association is willing to pay $4,000, our grant match would be $4,000. And so we're looking to write an article for the grant match. Now, I'm not sure we can wait and write it after we know whether Wyola has voted it or not. But the grant match would be $8,000 if they don't vote it. So we're asking to take that out of free cash. And or it would be 4,000 if they pay half of the grant match. So it's
And-
a $80,000 grant. And hopefully the town would only be 4,000 into it. That's a lot of
How big was the grant
return.
again? I'm sorry, how big was the grant?
80.
The grant is 80.
Wow.
And we're only on the
And-
hook for the 4,000 if the grant is awarded, I'm assuming, right?
Correct. So if you do an article for it and the grant's not awarded, you don't spend the money, you rescind the article and it comes back to your free cash.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm not sure why we wouldn't do this, right? I mean, that's
Right.
quite a bit of money.
The no-brainer, yeah.
Yeah, so Gabe, would you recommend then that we write the article for 8 and then modify it if
I
they,
would, and then modify it after they vote it.
okay,
So we can modify it up to the point of when we post the warrant. That's why I'm suggesting we go ahead and write these articles and remove them. I do have a question for you. We don't have a copy of this sheet, AJ. I don't think. So
wanna
do you
work it
guys
off?
write does the TA write the articles or do you write the articles? I'm used to writing the
Yeah,
articles.
no,
Yeah.
Becky always did.
It's
Okay.
always, yeah, we've never
Okay.
done it. No.
I don't want to assume anything. So
Yeah.
Haley and I will write the articles.
Okay. All right. So I'm just putting it in Lake Wyola grant matching funds. Okay.
So can
Um,
you send this to us, please, AJ?
Yep.
Okay, appreciate it. Does it have the?
Is this on our docs, on our
This is,
Google
yeah,
Docs?
this is on our Google Drive.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's on, then we can probably just go
No,
on
no,
there.
I'll send you a link, just
Okay.
so you don't have to waste time looking for
Okay,
it.
thanks.
As soon as our meeting wraps up, yeah. All right.
I have one question. I'm having
please go
trouble
ahead,
getting
George.
to my hand.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, I just want to ask, could you just iterate briefly, what would these funds be used for again?
So there is some road work where there is washout around the lake and some culverts that need to be dealt with. So it's basically helping us fix some areas of around the lake where there's washout from water. I do have, she did write, Jennifer Wallace did write something up on it. And I can send that to you guys to read. Because I've applied for the grant. I already put in the interest, and now we need to get more detailed. So we have told the state we're interested. So I can send you Jennifer's email explaining it a little more.
No, that's good. I think I just wanted a general description
Yeah.
for the minutes.
Yeah. The
Thank you.
grant is for roads and culverts, that have water damage and that the lake definitely has some issues with their roads around it. I don't think it's private roads that we're dealing with. I think it's public roads.
Okay, Susie,
Yep, that's the one I wanted to make sure you were adding on.
all right. That was 10,000, right? Yeah.
We
Okay.
have 1, 2, 3,
What is the likelihood that this grant will actually come through for us?
pretty good.
Which grant are we talking about now?
The
lake
stormwater grant
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
The
lake.
80,000.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so I think that looks like we've got a complete picture of proposed capital items for this year's town meeting, right? I'm not missing
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
All right, so should we go to the budget now?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
So are we not going to talk about the, because on the agenda you had the regional school update,
Oh.
but there's nothing to update, right?
Just really briefly, I can tell you that the Amherst Town Council met yesterday and unanimously voted to, let me get the wording right, to refer the budget that the regional school committee approved, which is the one we talked about at our last meeting, applies modified statutory rate, but does require Amherst to go to 4.81%. So the town council, I think unanimously voted to refer that to finance committee, which then has to report back to them by April 28th. I think it's looking like there's strong support in Amherst to approve that budget.
April 28th, you said?
Yes. And I think their process requires them to have a budget hearing, I think on the 28th then. So I think they would be in place, they would be ready to make a formal approval, presumably the meeting after that. So I think early May, in other words, I think before our town meeting, we will know if Amherst has approved the budget. So I think it's looking, based on, I think, feedback that Bob has shared with us from Pelham. I think this is looking like we know what the budget for the region is going to be.
Well,
Yeah, George.
so I had a little conversation, and Bob, maybe you did too, with John Trickey. John Trickey's concern is that there's not going to be support in his town.
Right.
There's a lot of scuttlebutt in Amherst about the cost of the per pupil cost in Amherst and how it's so much higher than other communities. The communities that were referenced in what John had sent us was Long Meadow and Northampton, but those were the full school systems with the elementary schools, not just the regional schools. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. As everyone knows, your pupil costs at elementary schools are much lower. But that's the talk going around, and it is a large budget in Pelham. So I think, John supports it. John has offered how he's going to pay for it, but I'm not sure John is confident that it's actually going to pass in his town.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to kind of add on to that a little bit.
Please, Bob.
My question is, I think the process, it requires 3 towns to approve this budget. Is that true?
Yes.
So if Pelham were not to approve it, it wouldn't necessarily kill it, because he does anticipate, as he said it, there'll be a lively discussion about it
Yeah.
at town meeting.
Yeah.
You're correct. And I did, Lynn, I had a conversation with Rita and Lynn Griesmer last week, and Lynn had some information from Leverett that their finance committee was going to support the budget proposal. So, sure, Leverett voters could vote it down at their town meeting, but I think it says a lot that the two towns that were most significantly impacted by this latest proposal, Pelham and Leverett, are that budget is getting endorsed by their finance committees, and so, I would hope that would be pretty persuasive to residents that it's in everyone's interest to support the budget. But yeah, you're right. In it will require 3 out of 4 towns to approve. I don't know that there's any other regional school news, if anybody has.
That's
All
good.
right. Okay. So it's progress for sure. All right, so this is our current budget, and I think, George, do you want to alert us to any? I think you made a couple of updates that
There's
were
2 updates.
helpful. Okay.
Yeah, there's 2 updates. We changed the county retirement and Susie, what's the other one? At the bottom, actually, they're documented at the very bottom.
Okay.
So the last time we met, if you go right to the very, last time we met, our deficit was 254,889, and then there's 2 decreases. How did that happen? Gabe got back to me about the transportation from Amherst, and they lowered the number we had in there by 10,000, and then Susie found out that the 260 is what the retirement board is going to be charging us next year.
Okay.
So
Great.
those are the changes. And then all the other changes were all formatting changes. The things that we probably should talk about are in yellow on the notes column. The first one is the assessors. Now I know we increased their line to 35,000 for the administrative assessor.
Yeah.
Is that enough or not? We don't know. We're probably going to find out in a couple of weeks that it's too low. And then the other one I highlighted was the certification. If we outsource this, we won't have to pay certification. But if we hire somebody, they might request that we pay their certificate. So I highlighted those 2 columns, those 2 rows.
And
then
you
the
think
next one would be,
we'll have some clarity in a couple of weeks about this, or?
well, I'm not sure when. I mean, when do we have to have the budget done, I guess is the question.
So I think that's a good question. Gabe?
So the news is not good. It does not look like Regional Resource will take us on. They are maxed out with all the towns they have, and they're about $3,000 a month. So that's quite a hike. So we are in the position where we're going to have to look for someone. The personnel board is doing the job description at their next meeting. I think it's on a Thursday night. So this is definitely a question mark.
What was the name of the organization again?
Regional Resource, David Burgess asked them, and they don't think they can take us on. They're stretched too thin.
And they're the
How about if
only,
we find somebody and we tell that person to go apply and work for them? Honestly, I think 3,000 a month is a good deal.
It is a good deal. They pay, that's what's happening is they're grabbing up all the retiring assessors. And so, and paying them $70 an hour. So we're not willing to do that. You know, we don't offer enough money for an assessor, and our job is not full-time. So their people will work a full-time job and have 2 or 3 towns that they take care of. I think they'd talk to you if you could find them a body.
Gabe, have you ever considered a new career?
No. No comment.
Somebody asked me the question. I think that was my answer too.
Is that the only sort of outfit that would make sense for outsourcing this? Is there another option or?
That's the only one I know of. Regional Resource does on the east side of the state as well. So they're all over the place. And Harold, the guy that owns the company, is retiring and the Vice is taking it over. So I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, April?
I was just wondering if you had any news from some of the other possible sources for an assessor that we talked about, approaching some of the part-time people in the area.
Yep. So the part-time person we were thinking about has been
Yeah.
hired by another town. And people are snapping them up faster than you can say spit. And I have a call into another person and I have not had a call back.
That's not good.
Okay.
Would we be able to, I'm brainstorming right now. Can you have people working in other capacities within town, part-time, hire that person full-time and ask them to do this job as well? I'm thinking the treasurer. I know it's a long shot.
It's a long shot.
The treasurer do it?
Yeah, because he's a smart guy. He
Do
hardworking.
you know how many towns he works for, John?
Yeah, I know you mentioned it before. Where are we going to find these people?
Well, I do think, I have asked Brennan to consider learning some of the job that Leslie does. Some of the low hanging fruit, so
Mhm.
she can do some of the other stuff. And so it relieves the pressure on her that she's experiencing.
Yes.
He said he's willing, but he still needs to pay attention to his first job first.
Yeah.
So we are trying to think out of the box here, because you only have 8 weeks before July 1, kind of.
Mhm.
Yeah, 9 weeks. No, a little longer because I'm thinking April's over. It's not, but
But
it's
it's
gonna
less
go
than 3
by
months.
it's gonna go by so fast.
Yes.
I don't know. You may have to train somebody from scratch.
Oh, God.
All right.
So I don't know if 35,000 is enough or not, but that's our placeholder right now.
Okay.
Yep.
I think to answer somebody's earlier question in terms of timing, this is what we had discussed when we revised our schedule, when we postponed town meeting, is that we would have a final budget vote on, within the FinCom on May 6th. We would attend the select board meeting on May 13th and vote on warrant articles. We would have a public information session. I think we had said May 29th, which is Thursday. I'm actually was gonna ask you guys, I actually have turns out I have a conflict that night, so I was gonna suggest Wednesday, May 28th or Tuesday, May 27th. I don't know
Complex.
if folks would be okay with that. So
Yes.
one of those 2 nights. And then town meeting on May 31st. Is that-
AJ,
yeah,
for the minutes, what was the first part you said? We need to vote on the budget, the finance committee on,
May 6th.
May 6th,
okay, got it. And then the select board on May 17th. Okay,
Yeah.
13th.
May 13th, yeah. Does that, am I making the right assumptions about the timing and how many weeks the warrant has to be, all those rules that I can't quite remember. Does that sound right? to
Yes.
everyone? Yeah.
Ye-
Okay.
Yeah.
And Gabe, do you know if that's the date, May 13th, that the select board was planning on reviewing and voting on,
So tonight was the 8th, the 22, and then we have the 6th. No, they would have to schedule an extra meeting. I don't see why they wouldn't schedule an extra meeting. They're willing to go weekly if they need to. And I think they have to do it by then because your meeting's the 31st, you need 14 days.
Mhm.
you're cutting it kind of tight.
I mean, I guess in theory, if they did it on May 6th,
That would work.
we could bump up our deadline and say that we've got to vote internally. What would that be?
29th?
The 29th of April.
I like that better because then it gives Donna McNichol 2 weeks to review the warrant for legal reasons.
Uh-huh. Do FinCom members think that that sounds right? I mean, that's a sufficient amount of time for us that's 3 weeks from tonight.
How many times were we meeting before then?
Well, we ought to discuss that, right? I mean, I think we had,
Every night.
Every
I mean,
Tuesday.
Yeah.
in theory, we could,
Yeah.
that would be the 15th, the 22nd, and then the 29th.
We can always can one if we're done sooner.
Yeah. I guess the question though is there, does anybody have any concern about whether we would be able to complete our process? To
I
me,
believe
that's 3
We're
weeks
almost there.
sounds right, but
the longer we leave it open, the more people are gonna come with us with requests. We should end it tonight.
right. Okay. I guess I guess the only concern I have are these like last couple of items that are still in yellow here and whether we're gonna have sufficient information to, to resolve those, but yeah. All right, so let's plan on that. Gabe, I think well, we'll plan on finalizing the budget and voting on it April 29th. The select board can vote on the warrant articles on May 6th. We'll attend to answer any questions and represent our recommendations. And then we'll do a public info session on May 28th or May 27th. And then we have town meeting on May 31st. Susie.
And I still would like to have somewhere fitted in here, a time to talk to all the departments so they understand what we've constructed and how to support each other as we bring it forward. I don't think they have to hear that before we do our final budget vote.
Yeah.
But I do think we need to talk to them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe we could do that on May 13th or May 20th. One of those.
Yeah, May 13th would be good.
Okay. I'm gonna put that on the calendar.
You said May 13th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I guess going back to the budget, should we go to the next,
Well, before you scroll,
Yeah.
so we have new information, and that is we're going to have to hire
higher?
an administrative assessor, which to me means we have to on line 29 insert $1,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Susie.
We also have to consider the request from the police department for 3,000 in operating
Yes,
increase.
yes.
So,
Keep going.
yeah, George, I feel like that's one where we should probably add a note too, right?
Yeah, the police department, yes.
Yeah. All right, so that's 20, so this would go to 23,000? Is that right?
Yep, I'm changing mine to 23,000 and, oh,
Okay.
shoot. Yep, and what are you gonna write for a note?
I was gonna say new expense, body
Body
camera.
cameras, yeah,
Yeah, new body camera license or subscription.
subscription.
We want to keep it fairly terse.
You're really eating up the line.
Happening with this, okay, I got it. All right,
Well,
Okay.
some of these lines you can see on line 104, I word wrapped, so I'm not too worried about the
Okay.
length. But I
Yeah.
think that's probably adequate.
okay. All right, so let me just see if I missed any other.
Tree warden is the next one, I think.
Oh, yeah. We get anywhere with that?
I guess I'll report back that I was gonna talk to Dave about that, but I haven't been able to meet with him. It's between the weather and people being out sick in his department, whatever. I just haven't had a chance to confab with him. I'm gonna work on that and try to get back to the committee. I'm assuming I'll be able to meet him this week.
Okay, so that's still open. And then the police chief.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's still open, I think.
That's open?
I think
That-
so.
Yes,
Yes,
it
it
is.
is. I asked her this morning, although she was in a meeting with the select board before she came here.
It
So,
wasn't negotiation.
No,
okay. all right.
they are reviewing a new contract this Friday, and then they're meeting again with her next week sometime. That hasn't been established.
Okay,
Okay.
so it
So
sounds like we're
TBD.
a week or two away, yeah, from
Are
knowing.
they at all interested in meeting with the committee that did the initial negotiations, or is that off the table as far as you know?
As far as I know, that's off the table.
All right, Susie?
When the negotiation committee met, there was a discussion of the possibility of funding some of the police salary from a health insurance option. I don't really know who's going to get to make decisions on this particular contract, but I guess I feel since that time that I would prefer to have all of the salary line, all of the salary on the police chief's salary line, because I feel it's more transparent, and the option of being able to use an offer of in place of a health insurance, which is something like Melissa knows from her workspace and Gabe knows from other towns. I just feel we're not ready to do something like that. So I would say whatever that line ends up, we have a plan to use cash reserves to ramp on the cost increases in the police salaries. So, but I don't, so we're using 90,000 as a placeholder, but I want to be clear that I think, I'm not advocating to use the health insurance option, and Gabe can speak to that because she was part of that negotiation and knows about it.
Yep. I really do agree with Susie. We should put, the placeholder should be 95. And you should take 5 out of the health insurance and reduce that by 5. That's the best way to balance it. If the negotiations had been left in the hands of the negotiating team, that's what I would have recommended for clarity's sake, just like Susie is saying. But it's really up to you guys. If the place marker is 90, I think you're safer with 95, and then it's always easier to drop it. But I would take that 5 out of health insurance because we have a placeholder for health insurance for her. I can't say this publicly. Anyway, you need, it would be comfortable to take it out of health insurance. Let me just say that.
Okay,
Okay.
that sounds good. So line 101 becomes 95,000. And then line, I'm going scrolling down, make sure we're in sync, AJ. Line 211 goes down to 619.
May I speak?
Yeah, just 1 second, Bob. So 6,
Down.
all right, does that look right, George? Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll check. Oh, well, actually, 7793662 on line 223. 77. Oops, I can't get to mine. 7793662. That's what I have. Okay, yep, we're in sync.
okay, cool. Bob?
Oh.
I just want to say I agree with what I think Susie said at the first. which is that it shouldn't be coming out of health insurance. If it's something that's approved, it should be her salary, that's it. The idea that it would come out of health insurance, I presume, is because she uses her husband's health care and is not benefited from the town. But the way healthcare works, is really not that way at all. I mean, if I'm single, I get a certain benefit, and if you're married and have a family plan, you get a different benefit. We don't adjust my salary. I think that we have a kind of a system where we benefit people who need it, and we benefit of what they need. If they are covered by somebody else, I don't think that anybody else gets a bonus for that, do they? I don't. So this is kind of untransparent. I don't know how her salary will be determined. It certainly won't be determined by us. I don't see we have any role in that, but I don't think that. I think her salary is her salary, whatever they decide to agree on as a contract.
I do respect that, Bob, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. The town of Athol has to pay out for people who don't take health insurance through them. New Salem is doing it. We don't offer attractive packages anymore when hiring people. It used to be you worked for a town, you had great health insurance, you had great vacation benefits. It has become a problem and then if somebody has a family plan, say we have a slot for someone, the town cost of a family plan is $18,000. So to negotiate and letting them have a portion of what they're not taking is now in today's light seen as fair. So if you were to give somebody $5,000 and you're not paying out $18,000, you're saving $13,000. But you have to have a stipulation in the contract that if they take the town health insurance, they lose that amount of money.
That was my question. Okay, so
They
that's
lose
actually,
it.
there would be language in the contract that includes that contingency. Yeah.
Correct.
Do we have any other positions that we could apply that to?
Any of your contracted positions. So MGL says you can contract treasurers, highway bosses, fire chiefs, police chiefs, and town administrators, and accountants.
Hmm.
So
If this
But
is done, it's going to
our legal attorney does not like contracts. So she she recommends contracts for police chief, fire chief, and highway and town administration. Nobody else. The treasurer doesn't have a contract. That's a good thing. The accountant doesn't have a contract. That's a good thing. So you have 4 positions right now that go out to negotiation and are not under the personnel policy. They can negotiate what they want to negotiate for those positions, just like any corporate person being hired in a corporate high-end position negotiates their salary, their benefit package, and all of that. That is becoming common practice. It's unfortunate, Bob, because it's not the way we're used to it. But I think, like Susie said originally, that's off the table right at the moment. I
Good.
can tell you that. That is off the table, but you're going to pay more in salary.
Right. Well, my point is, I think you just might have made it, but if we just provide this deal to the police chief, that means everybody else who's under contract is going to be eligible for the same deal. So it's going to cost us money because we'd be paying people a stipend for not taking our insurance or not having a family plan. And, I don't think that's advantageous for our finances, and I don't think it's fair because, let's face it, insurance, if you're a single person like me and you pay for insurance, or my brother who lived with his mother, he couldn't cover her in a family plan. But, it's just the way that the thing is set up is that you get a benefit. And if you don't take it, that's because you already have it from some other source.
But Bob, at least if we were contemplating this for a new hire, then this actually becomes an opportunity to save some money, right? So I think your point is that if this was an option for if some existing employee saw this as an opportunity for them, then we're not paying their insurance, we wouldn't be saving. But if this was something that we offered an incoming employee, this would be an opportunity for us to potentially save about $10,000.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
but you have to write it into the contract that if they do end up taking it, they lose that portion that you're paying them.
Yeah, that's the key. Okay, Susie?
And uh, oh, and the school employees are not in that pool of people, Gabe, that you mentioned?
No, they would
Right.
have to negotiate that in their contract. And that is what unions are doing. Athol is unionized and they have negotiated that insurance thing in their contracts. The teachers would have to do the same thing.
And police officers also have a contract.
All right.
Briefly make a point and I'll be done. I
Yeah,
promise.
please, Bob.
I just want to say, I see these issues which have been raised over and over in the budgeting process about retention and about giving people more. I see it just putting a lot of stress on our taxpayers. I think at some point, we, in our budgeting process, have more or less accepted what the department heads have asked for almost every time. We've never pushed back and said, no, we only can allow you a certain percentage increase in your budget because of our policy. And we're trying to be responsible to our taxpayers. We just continue to approve whatever the ask is. And I think that's not a good way to manage this process. I think we should say, this is our target. We don't want to be in the whole 340. We can't make up the difference with cash. We don't want to use the excess levy capacity, or certainly we don't want to have an override. And we have to ask people to trim their sales. So when are we going to do that?
Okay.
So one other, if we're back to the budget,
Yeah, go ahead.
line 166 is the only other thing I had open on this document.
Fire
And we have a
station.
note for it, and I'm not sure that, that's the appropriate note, minimal activity.
No,
Mhm.
just take the
mean-
note out. We don't have to do
Yeah.
a solution right now. We're just doing the mitigation permitting, and that's mentioned.
Is this line 166? Is this something we could remove from our budget altogether, or is it possible that this comes back in some future year?
Well, we can't remove it because there's amounts in it. We could, I suppose, put those amounts on, combine them in the line above, but it's probably different accounts on the accounts chart of
that's fine.
account, the town's chart of accounts.
Let's leave it then. Yeah. Okay.
But the only thing is, if people ask, why did you stop funding it? Should we have a note to say why? What did Susie say? There's no solution at present.
Yeah, no current requirement or something like that?
Right, no current activity. I mean, we don't have to do anything right now. They are not asking us to do something right now.
But the problem really has not gone away.
Right.
No. And so which is probably
So-
why we want to leave the line there.
Yeah.
And that's everything. I mean, like I said, so we're waiting on a tree warden, police chief salary, and more information about replacing the assessor.
Yeah, okay.
And so I am now at 238,
Yeah,
770.
yeah, that's what I have too. Yeah. So, and this assumes that we are just so everybody's clear that we are plan to recommend a town meeting the use of $130,075 of cash reserves to fund, I think, 5 lines or portions of 5 lines out of district placement in the amount of $34,000, legal line increase of $20,000, portion of the police department's proposed increase in the amount of $34,000, the regional school assessment increase in the amount of $33,825, and portion of the veterans benefits line, which is $8,250. George?
So I think this is the point where we look at the effect on the taxes.
Yeah.
With that spreadsheet we have that can help us do that. And we also look at the effect on cash.
Yeah.
You know, I've said multiple times now, you all know my opinion. Do we want to spike the tax rate and jump right up, or do we want to smooth it in? And we've tried to take some steps to smooth it in. I don't think that we should evaluate if we can put more cash towards the budget this year in anticipation of letting the budget absorb the rest next year. It would be really helpful if we knew and had a long-range plan, but we don't. The hope is, and what we're hearing out of the region is the bumps in the next few years won't be as great, but we don't know that. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the approach I would like to take,
Mhm.
like us to take.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I tend to agree, George. My only concern is I think based on all the different assumptions we've discussed, our free cash balance is dipping below the 10% guideline that we've tried to adhere to. Now we could use some of the stabilization funds. That would be an option, but maybe I'll just pull that up right now just so we can.
Yeah, please do. So 238,770, right?
Let's see.
Yeah, you pull that up. I'll double check that. But our
238,770 is the gap right now.
yes,
And all right. So what I'm seeing, again, based on all these different assumptions, we've got 5 proposed capital projects. We've got $50,000 for PFAS mitigation. And then we've got 5 operating budget lines that we are proposing to fund with some free cash, or at least partially fund. That leaves us with $759,070 of free cash, which is well, actually, you know what? I might need to change that. Let's see.
oh, it's 7.8. That's close enough.
That's close enough? Okay.
Yeah, our budget is currently 7,793. So
Okay.
7.8 works.
Okay, got it. All right, so that's puts our free cash balance at 9.7%. A little bit, yeah, a little bit low. Now we've got our guidelines say that we should have 5% of the operating budget saved up in stabilization funds. We've got a little bit of room there. So I was wondering if we might want to shift some of these allocations from free cash to stabilization. Bob, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say,
Mhm.
I think we should do that sort of thing at the end of this process, because we don't know what else
Yeah.
is coming in. But I wanted to also say about what George's point about let's smooth out the increase in the budget by throwing some reserves at it. First of all, if you read the newspaper today, you'd see that we're in a very, very strange period in our economy, and we don't know what things are going to be like. Never mind next year, next month. We do have some capital programs, capital expenses coming up next year, which are significant, like the parking lot and some other stuff that we talked about earlier. So that's going to be there. That's going to be put pressure on these accounts next year too. So I'm not, as a rule, we've talked in the past, and I think George has been one to say this. We don't want to use cash to fund operating expenses. It's kind of a bad road to take, and I think, and particularly in these perilous times, we should be more careful with that approach. Not that I'm against lowering the impact of the taxpayer, not at all, but just I'm worried about that aspect of things.
Yeah.
AJ, if we look at the other schedule and look at what the impact on the taxpayers are at the different levels,
All
we
right.
might decide that pick a level and then see how much cash we would have to spend to achieve that level.
Okay. So George had prepared let me see, make sure I get the right one. Okay. the following analysis to see, well, maybe you want to walk us through this, but my understanding is this allows us to see the impact of varying levels of excess
Yes,
levy capacity usage
yes.
and see how that impacts the,
So what I did is column H, I took the data from the assessor's recap sheet and I calculated the tax levy. And then I calculated the tax rate, the average single family, and you can see that our average single tax bill comes out to 6,260. It's really 6,258. There's rounding in there. But I basically made this calculation to make sure I'm doing it right. And then I took what we have in 2026, and right now I'm going to just double check the 5,943 on line 20 is the exact same number in our revenue sheet that we're using to fund our budget. 5,943,291. Is that what that is?
Yep, 290.
by dollar, but yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I calculate, if that's the case, then I calculate the tax rate would be about 1654, 1656 after the senior discount for the people who means test. And we would end up with a average single tax bill of 6,549. But there's a flaw in this column, and that is if we have $45,000 in new growth, then our assessed value of our property has to be the equivalent of the assessed value that you would tax to raise $45,000. So if you look at row 7 in column J, you will see that I raise, well, actually, above row 7, there's an increase of 2,844. Current tax rate times that amount gives you $45,000. So the assessed value, assuming that there's no market change in the next year, and I'll get to that in a second, we really need to increase the assessed value of properties. When I do that, that changes the calculation down below on row 34 for the tax rate. And you can see it lowers the tax rate because more people are getting taxed. And so the tax rate really, if we did not use any excess levy capacity to fund this current budget, the tax increase would be $2.38. And I also cross-checked that number down below in section 45 and below. We don't need to necessarily look at that, but we know that when we add $10,000 worth of expense, that it adds $11,000 worth of, I'm sorry, how do I word that? I know that the impact on taxes is 1.1. It's just a formula that we came up with a long time ago. So I used that and I essentially got the same numbers. So I was cross-checking and it worked. And how I know that works, and I'm getting a little squirrely here, I understand. But if you look at row 37,
Yeah.
and you look across, you'll see as we increase as we use excess levy capacity, which is denoted on line 19, we lower excess levy capacity each year. The 50,000 in red is added to the tax levy. 100,000, 150. You can see the tax levy in row 20 goes up by 50,000, right? Starting in K and through. And the impact of that is an increase of $55 on the average single family tax that's down on row 37, if you look at the row numbers.
So every incremental increase in excess levy capacity of $50,000 results in a
$55 increase.
$5 increase in the average single family tax bill.
Right, for every 50. So for every 100, it's $110.
Yeah.
And that's the 1.1 factor I used at the bottom to
Got it.
double check
Okay.
my numbers. Because I want, when we present this, if anybody asks us, if we're going to present this information, we're going to talk in terms of ranges. These
Yeah.
numbers are estimates. There's factors that change, but these are reasonable estimates of what the impact on our tax bills will be next year, on the average single tax bill will be next year. And, the valuations are going to change next year. Properties are probably going to go up. Maybe they'll go down. Like Bob said, in a month from now, it's going to be different than it is today. And a month after that, it's going to be different. But I'm using the same single family value for next year as we're using this year. So it is appropriate to use the same assessed value because they both would change at the same, to basically the same extent or enough for, government work, for estimation.
Yeah. Okay.
So right now we've got, just to finish that. So if you really want to look at column O, because
Here, yeah.
250 to balance this budget, we would have to use 238, not 250, but using 250, or you can go to column J, AJ, in the blue, type in 238, 770. And then for 499, we're looking
Yeah.
at $500 increase in the average single tax bill if we do.
But we have a couple of lines that we know are gonna still need to be updated, so it does seem like the 250 is probably an even better approximation of where we're gonna end up, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, hopefully we
No,
can drop
that's
the
helpful.
tree warden line.
Susie.
And because the whole game is about juggling jello and we don't know state aid, we don't know this, that, and the other thing. In the past, our conservative estimates have not run an increase of 2.5. That's how we got our excess levy capacity. So we know that this would be an outside number, likely. Is it 511? Yeah, 511 or 499, whatever, is likely to be an outside number in terms of the tax bill increase.
I would make 2 points about that. One, we are using probably the lowest estimate of a cherry sheet. And so we are being conservative. So to Susie's point, it's true. These numbers are the worst case scenarios. And the other thing is, in the past, when we made predictions at town meetings about what the tax rate will be next year, I've always argued that the logic we used wasn't the best logic. But for conservative sake, so when I showed you up top earlier, I add value for the new growth. We haven't been doing that in previous years. So we've been calculating much higher tax rates than have been happening. And that's a debate I've had, honestly, with Becky. And Becky wanted to be conservative and she didn't want to do that. But I really think that we're always too high. And that is the reality, is that value will be added to the assessed values of the town. So I'm comfortable doing it this way. And
George,
so to Susie's point, we do always come up higher, but I think this year, not to the extent that we have in the past.
Okay, and the reason for that is because we're assuming a higher new growth amount than we have in years past? Is that?
Well, it's not only that. Well, we would put in a new growth amount, but we would never adjust the assessed value for the values of those new properties.
I see. Got it. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing this year.
I see.
I've got it set in a formula. When it was 35 and I changed it to 45, it automatically adjusted the value of the properties because I got a formula to do that. So I just think this is a more accurate way to do it. And Susie's right. We have been well too high on the estimates. And I think we probably will be this year because we're being as conservative on our revenue estimates, but it won't be to the extent it has in the past.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful. Bob?
Just to respond to what George said, I think I follow you, George. I do understand and agree that you're right about that. But one point to make is that the way that we calculated those things allowed us to accrue a lot of cash. We got a lot of free cash out of that without having to try because we were underestimating those factors. And so if we were to tighten up our projections, we won't be getting that cash. So that's another consideration.
I don't believe that's true, because these are just estimates. And we generate our free cash from
Underspent
people
line.
not spending their budgets. And
Right.
as far as
We also generated by under representing how much revenue we get. from,
Right, but the assessors are gonna determine what the actual revenue is, and they're gonna find out what the latest cherry sheet is. They're gonna find out what the most current, we're talking September, October, the most current estimate for local aid and all the other sources, and they're gonna set the tax rate based on that, not based on anything on our revenue side. So that really, this decision we make here now is not going to result in us generating free cash or
my point, George,
vice
was
versa.
it affects it in that we plan the budget under those, in those terms. So that does create the surplus that I was referring to. When the final numbers come in, we had more money raised than we had planned to get. So that is
No,
simply true, isn't it not?
no,
I'm
because
not following. Yeah.
We underspent.
we present a budget and then we present how we think it's going to be funded.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and the tax levy number we come up with could change based on the new information the assessors will have in the month of October. And so what would happen is if Chapter 70 is higher, then they'll lower our tax levy number. But they're still going to make sure that there's enough money to cover the amount of the budget. It's just going to change where that money comes from. And none of that's going to generate free cash. What's going to generate free cash is if we collect more than they estimated we were going to collect, or we spend less than when we budgeted. But this decision is not necessarily going to generate free cash or put
Okay.
us in a position where we would, because the assessors are going to not necessarily, they're not going to use these numbers. The only number they're going to take out of all of this is the budget number. And then they're going to look at all the things that we've been estimating, and they're going to use those things to calculate the tax rate. So if Chapter 70 is higher, they'll lower the amount of the tax levy. It'll be lower than what we said. But in the end of the day, they're still going to be generating or anticipating the same numbers we are on the bottom line to cover the budget. I know it's the way the state sets this up. I guess it's probably the only way to do it, but it does get tricky.
Yeah.
But again, this is not going to affect free cash. It's the behavior of the department heads and the taxpayers. I don't know where you get extra revenue from,
But basically what you're saying is that if we fund the deficit right now, that would be the 250
Yeah.
number?
Yeah, something close to that. Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be somewhere between $500 and $530. I would even say between $480 and $530.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah,
So is there anything else that we could take out of our cash reserves to kind of moderate the impact?
oh,
Was there-
if I may, I don't want to confuse things, but I'm probably
Yeah.
going to.
Go ahead.
AJ, if you scroll down to row 45, row 54, thank you. One of the things I did was I took the breakdown. You can see I have estimated increases just to double check the ones above, and the 505 versus the 499, the 297 versus the 283, and we're okay. I also am able to break those down between the three components of new revenue. And the three components are 2.5, right? The 2.5 increase, the library building is new, and the excess levy capacity. And when we say that we're adding $500 to the average single tax bill, it's broken out by those three things. And the
That's
key
helpful.
thing I want to point out is that the library building, year one, is adding $63 to the average single tax bill.
Mm.
So you might want to take that into perspective when you're thinking about these increases.
That's
So
helpful.
that's actually helpful. So what we could say is, under under our assumptions, the average single family tax bill is going to increase $500, and 275 of that is due to our utilization of excess levy capacity.
263.
Oh,
Yeah, you're looking at the
I
other
was
column.
looking at the-
You're right. Yes.
I was looking at the
right.
250 number, but yeah,
Yep,
yeah, I
yep.
get it. Okay. Susie,
To April's comment, is there anything else we would move out of operating to take from cash reserves? I think the thing we also have to be concerned about is we're gonna ramp on some other expenses next year. And we will have X amount of levy available using 2.5 of whatever we approved this year. And so we have to make sure we're not getting too far out there. So this is a process of softening the spike, but we have these expenses we're trying to meet 2 years.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think one of the things we could consider is because we are not taking on new debt and we're not using stabilization to buy any new assets, anything that comes to us next year for a purchase, well, I guess it's not necessarily true for the parking lot. I was going to say, generally speaking, when we go to town meeting and we approve something and it's going to be borrowed, or even purchased, many times it doesn't happen in the subsequent year. It happens in the following. It doesn't happen in 26. It happens in 27. So when people come to us in 26 for 27, we might not have any debt service from any of that. My point being, we might be able to use some of our stabilization next year to pay off one of those notes. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking out of the box. So my point being, maybe we could justify using cash for some of that new debt service that we have this year, knowing that we might pay one of those items down and it won't be in debt service the subsequent year. Possibly replaced by something else, but you might call it making a down payment on future asset purchases. I don't know. That's one thought I had. I also think that if we're talking about smoothing out increases, we smoothen out the police department. We're smoothing out we're smoothing out the police department. Why not do it with the health insurance and say, 20% is too much in one year. So we're going to hit you with 10%. And then the next year, 10% is the other 10% is going to come in. Because that increase was what, 104? I think we lowered it to 99.
Right.
So, I mean, half of that, 50, what would happen if our 238 or our 250 went to 200? Now we're looking at 457 instead of 511.
Yeah.
And 63 of that is the library. So basically it's $100 plus the impact of the library.
Wait,
A quarter, a 400 plus the impact of the library.
That'd make our free cash reserves use go from 130 up to 180. Is that what you're thinking?
That would be the effect of that, yes.
Yep.
so the health insurance, okay, let me just make sure. It's a little late, so I'm getting a little foggy. But
How do we do this?
the health insurance, the health insurance line is projected to increase 99, well, we're budgeting a $99,000 increase. So your suggestion is that we take essentially half of that increase, or about $50,000, and fund that portion with cash reserves?
Yeah, in anticipation of us having to absorb the rest in the subsequent year.
So that would reduce the gap by $50,000, and that would
Bring us to
lower tax bills by that 55, the average
Yeah.
tax bill by that $55 you pointed out earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
Puts us at 457, right?
Wait, say that again?
Puts us at 457 for the estimated increase.
Suzie.
The other thing I've heard George talk about is we have been pushing on our representatives to change some of the aids that we receive. It's true, we have really uncertain times, but I believe that bringing the town along as best we can keeps us from getting into a bigger hole. There's things, if you don't spend now, you have to spend later, and it's more expensive. So there's a hope. And, it's the kind of advocacy I've been trying to do with our legislators to get some of the funding for rural aid, or for the pilot, or for different possible revenues. We can't count on it, but we can say that's where we're working. And that would also help change next year's picture.
Mhm. Yeah. Bob?
I just want to say, if we do this, what George is proposing, and that's 10,000, that's half of the money will be at the deal with next year, the other 10%. There's no guarantee that we're not going to have another increase in healthcare next year as well. So that's my concern about that. Yeah, then, and as Kristen said, the light at the end of the tunnel, but I didn't know it was going to be a blue flashing light at the end of the tunnel.
It's scary.
9 o'clock is the sort of witching hour for me. So
Yeah. So
and
we
we're
should
there.
probably wrap up. George, did you
Yeah,
have
no, I was just gonna say what Susie said, there is a possibility, one of the other possibilities here is some of this money we're using for cash to create a structural deficit may actually be filled by future revenue. That is a possibility. There are 3 bills that potentially could help us. The Senate is arguing about Chapter 70. If they do come up with a little something, it helps Shutesbury a little, but it also helps the region, which helps Shutesbury a little, potentially. So that is another part of the coin. One, we're stepping up, and 2, there is a chance that future revenues will fill some of that gap. I think is a really important point.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Last thing I wanted to say tonight was just, I think we've got time, but one of the things I think we're gonna need to do this year is pull together information on what's happening with budgets in our neighboring communities. I think that's gonna be important context for our residents. We're not alone in experiencing the kind of pressures, budget pressures this year. Seems like every day the Gazette's talking about another town that's contemplating an override or is dealing with something like this. So I think George, you did something similar last year, if I remember
2
correctly.
years ago.
I don't want, okay, so you have a lot on your plate, so I'm not saying that to assign you that responsibility, but I thought it was very helpful, and I remember we shared some of that information at our budget info session, maybe even a town meeting, and so that's just one of the things I think we should do in preparation for a town meeting this year. Is kind of pull together that information from towns, and I'm willing to spend some time pulling that info together. Susie?
I did follow up with talking to the school about the software program they got to help schools negotiate teacher contracts, a database that's in real time, and it has all the factors. And it took a big load off of the volunteers who were trying to negotiate teacher contracts. I got back to that company. They said, oh, we're just rolling out the municipal one. And so, so there's a municipal database that does treasurers and accountants and all of those numbers. And I am thinking that the personnel board needs to hear about it, and it might be something that FERCog can hear about it. But I think it will help us share this information about benefits and different salary scales for different positions, including seniority and things like that. So we've done a lot of work. This is a lot of work to get this budget in front of us, but I do believe there's some possibilities, and of course it would cost something, but I think FERCog would be the right agency to hold that contract, and then we might get some of this information we need.
That would be great. George?
So I have done that in the past, AJ, because I read the paper and I'd see it and I'm like, oh, I gotta write this down.
Yeah.
Here's my suggestion is we create a template, we put it on the Shutesbury Finance Committee Drive, Google Drive, and as people read and see stuff,
Put it in there, yeah.
just load it up. That way we can all contribute. And I think I'll try and make a little template, because I think one of the basic things you always want to have is what's their budget increase in terms of dollars and percentages. And then a lot of it's going to be free form, just text. People can just write this because of the school going up and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. or include a link to an article or something. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, great. All right, anything else before we adjourn tonight?
So I got the deficit at 188,770.
Okay.
That's with the
With the
insurance?
health insurance?
Yes, that's basically taking the $50,000 off what we had before, the 233.
Got it. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
So we're meeting, when are we meeting again?
Oh, yeah. So let's,
tomorrow.
so,
The 15th, I thought I
Yeah.
heard.
yeah,
15th.
15th.
Okay, good.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
Bob just wants to see the Celtics.
See him on my
I guess we should vote, George.
Arvanitis, aye.
Grove's eye.
One other thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We should have comment. I told Rita, because she asked me today, would you reach out to her, AJ? Well, it sounds like we actually made this decision. Just reach out to her to let her know when we can meet with them.
Uh-huh.
We did.
Sure.
Yeah, you just send her an email. It sounds like we already decided, so I guess it's,
About the warrant articles or something else?
yeah, no, about the warrant, about the
Okay.
budget.
Yeah, I'll send her a message.
Okay, Arvanitis, aye.
Grove's eye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Salvador, I. And Stein, I.
Good night. Thank you for your
Thanks.
work.
Good night.
Night.
For
Good night,
hanging in there,
everyone.
guys. All right, good night.